Well, let's just bow our heads in prayer. Father God, we thank you for what you mean to us. We thank you for this opportunity to come together as a community. God, we pray that your Spirit will prevail over all that we do. Everything we do will be within your will, and to your glory and your honor. Bless us now. Give us peace in our hearts. In Jesus' name, amen. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Leon Rodriguez, Chief Diversity Officer, but also Chief Troublemaker on the Sankofa trip, and Chief Coffee Drinker. Well, welcome to Primetime at the library. Primetime is a collaborative project between the Friends of the Bethel University Library and Campus Ministries, faculty development, and many other offices on the campus, celebrating learning beyond the classroom through experiences and accomplishments of Bethel faculty, Bethel staff, and Bethel students. I just want to let you know about the next BU Primetime, which is on April 4th, and students from Professor Angela Shannon's class will be presenting poetry from their poetry writing class, and they'll read their work as they kick off National Poetry Month at the end of April. We'll continue to celebrate with sonnets, songs, and suites, a celebration of poetry and Shakespeare's birthday, complete with cake and other events throughout the day. I guess that's where the sweets part comes in. Today we welcome Sankofa students who are going to be doing their report back. As you know, Sankofa means looking back to move forward. And this is a spring break journey, and it moves through the southern states, through the American South, following the trail of the civil rights movement. I do want to tell you how much I appreciate the students who gave up their spring break to go on Sankofa this year. You could have been doing other things. I won't say more important things, but you could have been doing other things. But these students have taken a journey beyond just the tip of the iceberg. They've actually gone deeper, and I trust that as you listen to the report back, you'll hear the sacrifices that were made. You'll also hear the ways in which God has worked in their hearts and created this transformative experience. I want to thank all those who offered the time to prepare for today, and I also want to thank Tandon for his leadership on Sankofa. Sankofa is a collaboration between my office and Campus Ministries, and also now the Student Life Office with Leah Fulton, who attended Sankofa this year. So without taking up too much time, I'm going to hand over to Edwin, who's going to do a slideshow for us. Thank you.
Again, everyone, thank you for coming. My name is Edwin Gonzalez, and I'm going to quickly go over a couple of the sites that we visited. There's a ton more than the ones that I will be showing, but I'm just going to quickly highlight a couple of those sites. Two sites actually, and two historical leaders. The first site being the Lorraine Motel. We started off the trip with a bit of a, I guess you could say, a twist, where we start where the civil rights movement for Martin Luther King Jr., where his life ended. Lorraine Motel is where Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. That there is where he was shot and killed. So we started the trip getting an idea of where Martin Luther King Jr.'s life ended. And then we work our way to Kelly Ingram Park, which is a park where many of you have seen those videos, those raw footages of a lot of the students, young adults getting sprayed by water hoses. And students also get to see in the mural, there's like a couple of murals in the park that demonstrate the animosity that existed during that time. Here you have these were the guard dogs. These were the dogs that were released by the police onto the marchers, the people the young adults who were protesting. And then across the street from this park is also the 16th Street Baptist Church, which was bombed, where the 4 little girls were killed. After that, we work our way to the Edwin Pettis Bridge. The Edwin Pettis Bridge is known primarily because of the Bloody Sunday, where once the marchers crossed the bridge and confronted the National Guard, they were confronted with gas and were beat because they crossed onto territory that they were once warned from crossing. And we also got a chance to walk this bridge ourselves and really embrace that atmosphere, embrace the environment that civil rights leaders, as well as people in our past, walked on. Then, in terms of people we meet, we also meet Reverend Gretz and his wife, Jeannie Gretz. They were the Rosa Parks. They worked alongside Rosa Parks. They were part of the civil rights movement and did a lot of work within the civil rights movement. We get to hear their story and their struggle, not only then during the civil rights movement, but also today. And we really get an in-depth look at their lives and the struggle that they went through. I mean, their house was blown up several times, and their children's lives were in danger a lot of the times as well. Then we also get to meet Dr. Josephine Bradley. She was a woman who integrated a school in North Carolina. She tells us about her experience of how, her trauma, dealing with that experience, being the first African American non-white student to integrate a high school during her time. And she tells us about her story, her struggle, and how that largely impacted her life after that. So we had a chance to, again, go through some sites that allowed us to really feel the vibe of what once happened there. And then we also get to hear the stories of people who experienced all that and the teachings that they have to offer us today in our society. And I end with this picture specifically because a lot of people have a lot of sadly, a lot of negative views towards Sankofa. But I leave this picture up because I think that this also says a lot about the trip, in that while it's intense, it's also a really good time where we bond a lot and we have a lot of fun as well. Next, I'll pass it on to two patients who will be talking about trauma, healing, and reconciliation.
So as we had said before, I will be talking about trauma, healing, and reconciliation. And one of the people that I chose to do mine, just to exemplify, was Dr. Bradley. And Dr. Bradley is a professor at Clark Atlanta University, and she told us her story and her account of how she desegregated a high school and integrated it, and how her voice was not heard at all until recently. And so I was checking up more about her, and she had an interview. She did an interview with the Los Angeles Times in 2004. And a quote that stuck out to me was, she said, "I learned to internalize the anger, pain, alienation, and rejection. I perceived it as a sign of weakness to let others know the real thing that I was feeling." And as an African American woman, I think that that's very true, with the idea of not telling others your pain to show that you are strong, to show that you can go through things. And oftentimes it's not helpful. And with Dr. Bradley's experience, we see that she dealt with a lot of that pain, or she kept it, she put it aside because she didn't want to come to grips with it because it was that painful. And just talking about the experiences that she had, going to her graduation ceremony and getting a warning call, getting a phone call saying, hey, you go to your graduation ceremony, we have a coffin ready for you at Brown Funeral Home. And it's that's so crazy. I think it's so crazy that people would actually do that. And so, but she went, and I remember her telling us she doesn't remember what it was like at that ceremony when she got her certificate, but she knows that it was tense and that people were like, what's going on here? And to make the pain even more hurtful was she went to an NAACP event, which is the National Association for Advancement of Colored People. And this is an organization that encompasses around having rights for minorities and equal opportunity. So she went to this event, and she felt that this was her validation and her recognition for what she had done by desegregating this high school in North Carolina. But she didn't receive public recognition for any of that, which was really difficult for her. And it was difficult because one of the Little Rock 9 people asked her, like, why are you even here? Like, you didn't do anything. And that's really crazy because she felt like she could get this validation from not only, like, she thought that she could get this validation from her own people, and she didn't even receive that. And so it was really difficult for her. And another quote that she said is about the learned behavior that she had during her time at Greensboro High School. She said, you do that for 9 months of your life, and it becomes a part of you, and I lost the ability to let people know how angry I was. So internalizing this, all of this, just taught her to be more quiet and not to speak, or to not raise awareness of what she had experienced and what she had gone through. And so it's her healing process and the reconciliation of healing, they go hand in hand in the sense that when we did go to see her, I could tell that the fact that we were listening to her story really impacted her and really helped her to move forward and to also recognize what had happened to her. And I think one of the funny stories, or not funny, but just kind of sad in a weird way, was she went back to her high school reunion. She felt like this was a way for her to really heal and reconcile with herself. And when she went to that sorry, reunion, they told her, like, you must be in the wrong place, because they don't remember her being there. And she said, no, I am in the right place. She said, is this the reunion of 1965? I'm not sure. I'll check. But 1957, yeah. And she was like, yeah, this is my reunion. This is where I belong. I went to this school. This is, where I'm supposed to be. Even though it was a short and awkward experience for her, she felt that it was needed for her. And another way I think that she heals too is through speaking about her experience to other students, and to students of color in particular. She went to an assembly to talk about what she experienced, saying, particularly to the Black students, don't make my efforts go bad. Like, just do what you need to do. Don't settle for a second-class education, which I thought was very important. And I think Dr. Bradley's experience is really important because at the same time that this was happening, I forgot to mention that Little Rock 9 was happening. And so she didn't get recognized for what she had done. And instead the Little Rock 9 students did. Not that what they did was wrong or anything, but at the same time, something else was happening and no one knew their story. But now Dr. Bradley is writing a book about this, and it's just reading some of her accounts, like in the newspaper. It's been a really traumatic experience for her, but for her to speak about these experiences, to tell other people about it, it's been really impactful for her. And so I'm really thankful for going on Sankofa and really getting to talk to her and getting to know her, because I really think that we as a group are part of the healing process, part of the reconciliation within herself and for other people. So, yeah.
I'd like to thank Tandon for giving me the nice, easy topic of white privilege to tackle today. It's funny to look back and remember my freshman year when I thought that white privilege was about as real as the Easter Bunny, maybe slightly more real, and then to see myself now trying to cram all my thoughts into one little thought. But I know Sankofa has played a huge role in that, so I'm very thankful for that as well. So yeah, I'm going to talk briefly about the white privilege that exists today in the education system of the United States. But the bulk of what I want to talk about has to do with the messages that we send to different students, the messages we send to white students growing up in the United States and the messages that we send to non-white students. growing up in the United States, because I think the difference in those messages is a vicious contributor to the differences in the level of achievement that we see in the education system. So did you know that you can, with scary accuracy, predict whether a young person will go to college or not based solely on the color of their skin? Half of African American and Latino high school students will drop out of school. Their white peers, on the other hand, graduate at a rate of 76%. That is what we call the achievement gap. So since we believe in a God that created all human beings with inherent talents and abilities, we know that that the gap there is not the result of the failure of those students of color. It's the result of a failed system, a system that's failing those students. I've heard it said that this issue is an issue of the haves and the have-nots. We actually even heard that on Sankofa. Interestingly enough, it was the white mayor of Birmingham that was saying that, but they wanted to say that this is not an issue of race. Now, in one sense, I agree with that, because the education system fails students regardless of race in a lot of situations, and regardless of race, a lot of students do succeed. But it cannot be denied that the haves in this situation are overwhelmingly white communities, and the have-nots are overwhelmingly minority communities. I want you to imagine for a moment if 50% of Wayzata students, which is 85% white, 50% of those students began to drop out of high school. Or imagine if Edina students, which is 87% white, what if they began to graduate their graduates only read at an 8th grade level? I'd like to say if that was the case, we would see such intense pressure on policymakers and on lawmakers to fix that problem and to find a solution to that problem. We would see mass mobilization on behalf of those students. The issue would be at the center of public debate. So why in the world is it somehow okay that those same statistics are true for students of color only a few miles down the road? I think at the society level, we have come to accept that some students are just going to fail. And you know which students I'm talking about. That is a very sinister message that has been widely internalized. That message has serious implications. So I want to look at two other messages, the two different messages between white students receive and non-white students. And I'll just start with my own personal experience and the messages that I received as a young person, specifically regarding education and my future. So I think it's a large part of my white privilege that every message that I received from society, from my community, said that I could be anything that I wanted, I could do anything that I put my mind to. When my future was presented to me, it came with all sorts of possibilities. I could be a doctor, I could be a teacher, I could be a businessman, a politician. And it was very easy for me to see myself in those roles, because the people in those roles looked like me. Success was an expectation for me, and that didn't come just from my family. That was from the messages that I received from my community, from the media I consumed. I knew that I should succeed. Unfortunately, my black brothers and sisters and other minorities in the United States are not sent the same message. Here's the dominant message. It's not the only message, but it is definitely the dominant message sent to young African Americans, primarily men. If you want to be successful in this society, you would either better be an entertainer, a rapper, a dancer, a singer, or an athlete. And what happens if you don't find success in one of those two ways? You're going to be a criminal, and you're most likely going to be a criminal and live a life in and out of prison. That is the storyline that we have established in our society. Our jokes, our movies, our music, and worst of all, our expectations. They give young African Americans a single storyline for how to envision their future. This might be uncomfortable, maybe a little awkward or painful, but I actually began counting the amount of times I heard those stereotypes reinforced here at Bethel, just preparing for this message. I didn't even count Facebook. I didn't have time to count that high. 9 times I heard these stereotypes reinforced, and used to limit and constrain a group of people. That's the climate of low expectations that steals the dreams of young people. That is the message that limits a child's ability to envision a successful future for him or herself. So I just have a simple proposition. What if we started sending the same message of potential and possibility to all young people? What if we expected all kids to achieve highly? What if we said enough with the stereotypes they're simply not fun? A friend recently reminded me that everyone deserves equal access to hope. We can't necessarily give everyone their dream job, but I think that we can give all kids equal access to the ability to dream for themselves.
My name is Washington, and something I'll be discussing with you guys is the impact of Sankofa on students and how it has helped us to take actions to bring about social change. So what is social change and why does it matter? It's a community-based response that addresses the underlying social problems on individual, institutional, community, national, and/or international levels. Social change can change attitudes, behaviors, laws, policies, and institutions to better reflect values of inclusion, fairness, and diversity and opportunity. Social change involves the collective action of individuals who are closest to the social problems to develop solutions that address social issues. In 1963, the letter from Birmingham jail written by Martha King discusses 3 ways to go about social change. One way is the method of surrender. This is basically doing nothing, allowing the oppressed to be oppressed and allowing the oppressed to continue to oppress. The problem with this is that the oppressed can only take it for so long. And as we know as Christians, segregation is not part of the will of God. All segregation statutes are unjust because segregation distorts the soul and damages personality. It gives the segregated a false sense of superiority and the segregated a false sense of inferiority. The second way is the method of uprising, or rising up against their oppressors. This way isn't effective at all. Though it may conquer some kind of means, at the end of the day it only leads to more social problems than it solves, and leaves generations to come even in more turmoil. It is wrong also to use immoral means to attain moral ends, which is what Martin Luther King talks about. The last method is the method of nonviolence. And this method seems to be the most effective method that we learned from our trip on Sankofa, from watching the Freedom Riders getting on the bus and going down to the south to protest sit-ins against segregation within restaurants, bathrooms, separate water fountains, and just the whole system of segregation, forcing blacks to go in the back of clothing stores to try on clothes if they were allowed to try on clothes, whereas whites could go through the main doors and try on clothes openly without any shame. Dr. Martin Luther King talks about 4 steps to go about this. He says, determine whether the law is unjust or not. And he describes how an unjust law is a law that is numerical. A power minority group compels a minority group to obey what it does not obey. So it puts a law on one group that doesn't expect to follow itself. Whereas a just law is a code that a majority compels on a minority and also follows it itself. In other words, a just law is in agreement with the moral code of God, and it uplifts human personality. An unjust law is degrading of humanity. You can have laws that are just on its surface, but unjust in its application, such as you can say our judicial system, where a white man can have a gun and go to jail for maybe under a year, and a black man can have the same issue and go to jail for maybe 20 or more years. It could be on their first charge. It's just not fair. We can go or try to seek negotiation. If that works, that's great. That's what we want. We don't want to have to go and seek other actions, but if negotiation works on the first time, then we will. But if it doesn't, then we seek self-purification. And this was done and demonstrated through the protesting of the students who were on Kelly Park. They were trained to, they were trained to take on physical attacks without attacking others. To take on brutal beatings, bites from dogs, being beaten by the sticks of the policemen who were there, who were supposed to protect them. And they were trained to take that on, which no man should have to take that on regardless of who they are. And after that training of self-purification, they went on direct action, putting into what they learned to seek justice. A lot of them suffered a lot of pain, but at the end of the day, obviously, we sit here as black and white students today, seeing that they had accomplished what they were set out to do. So the question is, how do we convince a privileged majority that there is need for social change? I say we educate them. We educate them about the consequences that their laws have created just to benefit them and cause oppression and dehumanization about others. But we should know that this will not be an easy task or a road to travel. That we know that we know very well that the painful experience that freedom from oppression is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. But I say we shouldn't be discouraged about it, because we know that Jesus Christ was an advocate for nonviolence. And he took on all the stripes from those who considered themselves majority, those who considered themselves kings of kings, those who considered themselves higher than those below them. Where Jesus, who was the king of all, decided to be with the minority group and show that this is not what it was meant to be. So we can take pride to know that nonviolence is an effective means to change, though it may not be easy, but we shouldn't let the bloodshed of others go to waste.
So we are not going to invite all the presenters up. Yeah, and we're just going to leave this time for Q&A. So if you have any questions, just feel free to raise your hand and then we'll take it from there. So if you have any questions with them, ask away.
You had mentioned earlier, Edwin, that you feel that some people have a negative view of Sankofa. Could you talk about why that is, or what's the issue with that? I mean, I'm looking at what I'm hearing here. I've been on Sankofa myself, and I'm not really. I don't know why that is.
Well, I think it's. I'll let y'all answer that.
I think it deals a lot with reconciliation, and because the attitude of when it comes to talking about reconciliation has been like, oh, I don't want to hear it, we talk about it too much. The fact that we're spending 1 week doing that and talking about civil rights issues, I think it does scare them away, and it really just, they really don't like hearing about reconciliation. I can speak on behalf of that because I've heard people come up to me and tell me about it, and so that's why I think that there's an
I think some students come back really energized. I know I did, and like maybe more like outspoken, radicalized, if you will. And I think obviously students are gonna, like, if it's their friends, they don't really have to deal with that.
And I'm gonna use your quote on this. That I think just last week you remember you saying that white evangelicals, or I shouldn't say white evangelicals. I know you said evangelicals, but I'm gonna go ahead and add white evangelicals like to view things from a historical distance. so they like to distance themselves from the reality of the civil rights movement in order to assume that then like things are perfectly fine now, and they don't want to confront the reality that white privilege still exists. And I think that's the case here at Bethel, is that a lot of these white students who grew up in these privileged homes don't like to confront the fact that they have privilege because their parents and then their parents benefited from the system.
Chris mentioned a little bit already, but I'm wondering what effect does it have on you having gone, the effect that it has on you at Bethel. Also wondering the effect that, the fact that the group is a multicultural group, what effect, had the group been all African American or all Caucasian, what effect does that have as well, going with the group of multicultural? On anybody.
I can answer that myself. It made it very real for me to know that there are students that are not of color that want to learn about our history that has been distorted or made less valuable to the American, to U.S. America, because Black history is very important. A lot of things that we have today we take for granted, but they were invented by Black people. But the thing that really, going along with our fellow students who are not Black, it also mirrors the fact that there is knowledge that still needs to be gained. I know that for me, I was broken a lot just because knowing that the system is created for us to succeed as Black students. As you can see, it hurts me to the core. And to see them reciprocate our feelings, try to understand though they can't fully understand, helps us feel a little bit better that we have somebody else here on campus who knows what we're here for.
I think it helps that there were white students also because it helped with the fact of like you said, getting a real picture of what it looks like, and reconciliation isn't just about one side, but it includes all parties together talking about what the issue is and what it needs to be done. So I did think that was more realistic. And also like being on campus, like you see other white students and you're like, hey, I know that white student, and I know that if I'm struggling with something, I can share with them without feeling like they're going to back away from what I'm saying. So that's been really helpful for me.
Yeah, I've told people that ask, like, the museums, the sites, the speakers were like the whole trip was really life-changing, like absolutely life-changing. I don't say that lightly. But like more than anything, hearing student stories, we break off and have like discussion times at night and talk about it in our context of Bethel and like our experience. Like hearing like what is it like to experience Bethel as a Black person or as an El Salvadoran, or it's completely different. Like, and I think I've heard of white privilege and some of these concepts at like a conceptual level. But having to have a context, like really, like it's like you don't know white privilege until you know it in its context, and like seeing this guy, like seeing people's tears, like it's just like, oh my gosh, like it just feels so much more real. Like, yeah, that's the only. And so then your reaction to it is more real because you can kind of fake deal with white privilege, and like I'm still kind of wrestling through that. Like, am I dealing with it am I kind of doing it at a nice, like, easy level, or like at the level that some of my friends have to deal with?
Okay. Well, thank you all for presenting. I appreciate that. I believe we also have some books to raffle off. So. So, sorry about that. Okay, well, now we're going to have the two people present a poem that was written on the trip. It talks about their experience. So, I'm going to have Tony and Sydney come up and share their poem.
Yeah, like Edwin said, this is a poem we wrote towards the end of the trip. It's kind of more reflection on what had happened. So I hope you can process it with us. It's titled The Exchange. leaving comfort, ignorance, privilege behind, not knowing our past would intertwine. So many stories, so much unknown, to break down the lies we've all been told.
You're worthless, you're stupid, you're not enough. What makes you think God can love both of us?
Elucidating the wounds of the past. A woman arrested on a bus. Children attacked by dogs and hoses. Marchers terrorized by gas and clubs. A king assassinated on a balcony. What was their crime? The desire for freedom and equality for all humankind.
Diverging and converging, we can't help but collide. Our paths are woven together, inseparable for all time.
Though we may grow weary, tension propels change. In unity, strength is found. Like a cord of many strands, we will not be broken. While the status quo resists us, we won't be turned around. Embracing discomfort, exposing lies, giving up privilege, for healing to be found.
So we want to give away a couple books here. Thanks everyone for coming. The first book we're going to give away is called Letters to Mississippi. It's from students at the time and as they were traveling to Mississippi, and there are exchanges some really, really interesting stuff here. So I'm going to let Edwin pull out a name here. Okay. And the other text that we have is a Right Preacher's message on race and reconciliation. It's Reverend Drett's text. He's a brilliant man that we've been able to spend time with. He's in Montgomery. He's one of the leaders of the Montgomery bus boycott. So it's a signed copy.
Gene?
Gene, okay. Here you go, Gene. Again, we want to thank everyone for coming. We're planning on doing this trip again next year, so if you're wanting to consider coming, if you're staff, faculty, if you're a human being and want to come on this trip, we'll talk to you. We don't care what level you are at the university. We want to continue to welcome everyone on this beautiful journey. So again, thanks for coming this morning.
I still want this book. Good thing I didn't buy one. You got it for free. It really is so